Welcome. Today we're diving into the world of stative verbs. Unlike action verbs, which describe things we do, stative verbs tell us about a state or condition. They're about what we think, feel, own, or sense, rather than what we physically do. For example, when you say, "I know the answer," you're not performing an action, you're describing your mental state. Understanding stative verbs is key to mastering natural English, especially when it comes to expressing thoughts, emotions, and relationships. Let's explore how these verbs work and why they're so important in everyday conversation. Stative verbs can be grouped into several categories. First, we have verbs about thoughts or opinions like agree, recognize, and doubt. Next, there are verbs of possession such as own, possess, belong, and have. Then we find verbs that express emotions, think love, hate, like, fear, and enjoy. Finally, some stative verbs relate to our senses, including seem, look, hear, taste, and feel. Each group helps us describe different aspects of our inner world, making our communication richer and more precise. What sets stative verbs apart is that they don't describe actions. Instead, they tell us about a condition or state that exists. For example, when you say, "I own 10 cars," you're not doing anything at that moment, you simply have them. Or, "The kids love to play outside in the summer." Here, love describes their feeling, not an action. Stative verbs help us paint a picture of what's happening inside, rather than what's happening outside. This is why they're so common in everyday English. Let's look at some clear examples. Janet feels that we should go home. Here, feels expresses Janet's opinion, not a physical action. Or, "I own 10 cars." The verb own shows possession. And "the kids love to play outside in the summer." Love here is about emotion. Notice how none of these sentences describe someone doing something. They're all about a state or feeling. These examples make it easier to spot stative verbs in real conversations. Sometimes, a verb can be both stative and action depending on the context. For example, think can be stative in "I think you're right" opinion, but active in "I'm thinking about dinner" process. A simple trick to tell them apart is to try putting the verb in a continuous tense. If the sentence sounds strange, it's probably stative. For example, "I am owning 10 cars" doesn't work, but "I am eating dinner" does. This rule helps you use verbs correctly and sound more natural. Let's review some of the most common stative verbs you'll encounter. For thoughts and opinions, know, believe, understand. For possession, have, own, belong. For emotions, love, hate, prefer. For senses, see, hear, smell. These verbs are used all the time in English, so recognizing them will help you communicate more clearly and avoid common mistakes, especially with verb tenses. Now let's put your knowledge to the test with some exercises. Try to complete these sentences with the correct stative verb. Do you the answer? No, Jim dessert every day. Has, I good about the race's outcome. Feel, she her mother. Resembles, do you they will win. Think. Practicing with real examples helps you remember how stative verbs are used and builds your confidence in using them naturally. Let's check your answers. The correct stative verbs are 1. Know, 2. Has, 3. Feel, 4. Resembles, 5. Think, 6. Appreciate, 7. Satisfied, 8. Smell, 9. 10. Have. Notice how each verb describes a state, not an action. Understanding why these answers are correct will help you spot stative verbs in any context and use them confidently in your own sentences. Sum up, stative verbs are essential for expressing states, feelings, and opinions in English. They're different from action verbs and have special rules, especially with continuous tenses. By practicing and recognizing these verbs, you'll sound more natural and fluent. Keep an eye out for stative verbs in conversations, books, and media, and try using them in your own speech. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become. Thanks for watching and keep learning.